Hey Branson, how are you doing?
I'm good, Dennis. How about yourself, sir?
Doing good, thanks. I think.
Yeah,
Best as I can tell.
that's how I feel most days. I think I'm good, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I try not to look too close.
I think I got that from my dad. He used to always say he had a motto like never try to redo the past, never look to the past. And only remember that you can only do better for tomorrow. So
Great advice. Great advice.
and over the years, it really has helped out because a lot of times, especially in business, you try to redo things you've done before, and sometimes it doesn't come out like it should, because you don't have that same feeling or the same just all the things that was together at that time. But you always can do something better and new, and so I took that to heart, and it really has helped out, especially when you start chasing it yesterday.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I think is really important is really having a sense of where you are. I was thinking about when I was a kid. I went out for the basketball team when I was in seventh grade, the junior high basketball team, and I got cut. And really the reason I got cut is not only did I suck, but I literally had never touched a basketball. I really had the only reason I was even there is because I was so tall. But I had no idea what I was doing. But I learned from that, and I did develop some skills and so forth. So then the next year, I became the first eighth grader to make the junior varsity in 20 years. So you just learn, and can't get all upset about things that don't work out in the first pass.
Right.
Hey Jack, how you doing?
I am doing finer than frog fur, split four ways, and not near as dusty.
Wow.
I didn't know frogs had fur.
It is so fine you cannot see it.
Oh, perfect. Like my brain.
Sounds like mosquito jackets.
Yeah,
A mosquito jacket. That's another one. Is that another?
That's a Carolina saying. Um, but I forget how the old folks said it, but um, you you're about as warm as a mosquito in a jacket, a mosquito jacket. And I always, as a kid, was thinking, why would a mosquito wear a jacket? But um, I guess it's saying your jacket's a little too small. You're gonna be cold because mosquitoes have small jackets. So.
That reminds me of a story. I had an identical twin brother, and when we were real little, we were about 4 or 5 years old. We were walking back from the neighborhood pool, which is about a block away. It wasn't very far, and we were walking by this warehouse place, and a guy was unloading his truck there, and he yelled out at us and said, "Man, you people here in New York State have uh, too many damn mosquitoes," or something like that. And my brother looked at him and said, "Well, at least we don't have gnats like they do in Ohio."
Good night. Oh no.
Yeah, he's little, but I was so impressed that he could just respond that fast at that age. It's pretty ridiculous, I thought. At least we don't have those damn gnats like you do in Ohio. He had never been to Ohio. He hadn't been anywhere. I didn't even know any idea where that came from. Probably heard some adult say it somewhere. Be my guess. All right. Well, it looks like the gang's all here, or a good chunk of them. So go ahead and get started. And thanks for coming. Today we're going to talk about key performance indicators and kind of how to set them up. And really the idea here is really introduce you to the concept. It's not really intended to walk you through step by step how to do it. Although there is worksheets and all kinds of stuff here that you can use should you decide you really want to. So let's give it a start here. Okay. Okay. Is that full screen for everybody?
So today's purpose is to identify your key performance
Is it?
indicators
I'm
by
sorry.
following your customers' journey.
It's not full screen?
No.
Okay. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. Sorry about that. Okay. Let's see.
So that you know what to grow during Techstars and beyond.
We'll start it again. Is it full screen now?
So today's purpose is to identify your key performance indicators by following your customer's journey so that you know what to grow during Techstars and beyond.
I'm sorry. Can you guys see it okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just making sure.
So often when you're inside a company and you think about taking an idea, finding prospects, trying to get them into your company, turn them into customers, can often feel a lot like this. So you put your safety goggles on because entrepreneurship's a little bit dangerous sometimes. You're like, okay, we're going to knock down these dominoes, run these marketing campaigns. We'll try to get some attention from the market, try to get people to pay attention to us. That'll knock over a couple other things. We'll get some leads. We'll try to get those leads in the door. That'll knock a few more things off. Now we got the ball rolling internally with our delivery of the product. We try to get them, signed up, provisioned, onboarded. Try to get, find the little places where we didn't quite do it right, which then kicks off another thing, which whacks some consumer complaints. Got bodies flying, parachutes jumping, balls dropping, cans going over. At the end of the day, we're trying to figure out how the heck to make this business work. And early on, most of the time, all we get is a bunch of paint in our face. So this is very much what it's like to be in an early stage startup. The reality is, as your company scales, as you grow, the Rube Goldberg machine goes away a little bit. And notice here you can see in the background, this was not the first time they did this. If you want to see this whole thing, this is from OK Go. It's one of their fantastic videos. They did it in one take with one camera. Crazy. But building and scaling a company can feel like you're living inside of a Rube Goldberg machine. Should feel really simple to be like, can I just run an ad and get $1 million out the other end, please? But early on, you have to go through all that stuff that you just saw OK Go through. So today what we're going to try to do is make that Rube Goldberg machine a little bit more visible to you, gain a better understanding of how your business works by determining 2 to 3 KPIs you need to understand, track, and goal set to drive progress here and beyond. I first want to start out with some concepts because I think there's some important language here that's valuable to the discussion. And I came to know a lot of these concepts because my background, being an entrepreneur, building scalable companies, I've been on a couple journeys from literally 0 to 360 million in revenue in one company and 0 to successful IPO in another company. And throughout that process, what I realized was the degree to which you can understand your KPIs, which they don't just come from on high and magically appear to you, you have to work at it. But the degree to which you can understand those KPIs, it really, really can drive the success of your company. Okay, so let's talk about concepts. KPI, just want to make it clear, key performance indicator. These are all kind of fall into the branch of metrics. So as I think about this, there are metrics, which represent a numerical understanding of your business. KPI is a subset of that, which are the key indicators that you really pay attention to that are the drivers of your business, or at least measure critical drivers of your business. Metrics in general, but specifically KPIs, allow you to create a shared understanding within your company, not just with the people inside your company, but with investors as well. It's a great way to share with them how your business works. It allows you to effectively communicate internally as well as externally, because right now, you're at the size where you're just figuring stuff out. As you start to scale, you're all going to be the chief communication officer in your company. You're going to be storytellers telling the rest of the organization how this moves forward, how it works. It enables structured thinking. and validated learning. So if we think about learning, validated learning, that's derivative from the scientific method, which means we have a hypothesis. If we do this, we expect this result. And by actually measuring the result, you can compare that with the actual, and it's in that gap that creates learning. So critical to understand how your business works. But ultimately what this is about, not an academic exercise, but this is about making progress in your business. How do you grow the thing? How do you make it go to the way you want it? With the I'm going to give an overview here and I'm going to give examples. Then, because I believe it's beneficial sometimes to learn not in your domain, is I'm going to give you a car driving example because my presumption is, especially being in LA, everybody drives, everybody's familiar with cars. And then I'll give a startup example. These are concrete examples from Techstars companies that I've worked with. That includes the 3 classes that I was a part of as an MD team or coach in Boulder, as well as network-wide, a lot of the classes that I've been working with. So first up, actionable versus vanity. So this comes out of the lean startup language. Actionable metric for your car, check engine light goes on. Pretty clear sign I need to take action on that. I need to do something. A vanity metric is the relative horsepower of your super sport car. This doesn't tell the whole picture. This is for bragging. So you know it's a vanity metric when you're using it to brag. Because in car land, it's not just the horsepower, it's the torque, it's the weight of the car. There's a whole bunch of other factors that indicate performance and handling. In startup land, actionable is number of iOS crash reports per day. So I was working with a company, they were having some quality issues, and that became a KPI that they tracked for a few months to get their quality in order. Total iOS downloads, total vanity. Brag about that does really no good to understanding and making progress within your business. Flow over stock. So a flow metric in car is a rare sight here, but when traffic's moving smoothly, these are things, measurements that you look at over time. Stock metrics are like a parking lot. It's a cumulative metric. So it's a stock metric when the number can never go down. Stock metrics are very dangerous to pay attention to in your business because by definition, they only go up and to the right. Even though all of the mechanisms underneath your business may be failing, that number will lead you to think you're making progress. So if we think about this in startup land, daily active users, that's a flow metric. That's over some per unit of time, goes up and down with time. Stock metrics are total user signups. Again, great to brag about, but it doesn't let you really understand how your business is working. We've got qualitative and quantitative metrics. So what's qualitative? Those are the stories. So in this case, this is the text that describes car and driver's test of the BMW M2. So that gives you kind of a feel for what the car is like. And then quantitative are the raw numbers, the metrics. So here you can look at the actual numbers of things. A lot of times we think about in business building that it's only the quantitative metrics that matter, but the qualitative ones are really important too sometimes. An NPS example here, on the qualitative side, the storytelling side, it's really powerful. If somebody gives you a Net Promoter Score of 0, read their feedback. At Rally, when I ran and led the product team, every Net Promoter Score 0, 1, and 10 I would read that came in. And then a quantitative is a 30-day running Net Promoter Score. So the stories as well as the data can be very powerful. Leading and lagging. A leading metric on your car is the gas rangefinder that tells you how much distance you have left before you run out of gas. Not 100% accurate. Mine's at the very beginning tells me about 100 miles more than I actually have, and at the end tells me about 10 less than I actually have, which is probably a good thing. A lagging metric is the trip odometer, how far you've been. So leading indicators or metrics help you see into the future in a way that does have some noise and error into it. Lagging indicators tell you the story about what happened in the past. So if you think about running your business, if you're running your business off of lagging indicators, it's like driving your car looking through the rearview mirror. Leading indicators are like looking out the front of the car. I actually know somebody who can drive pretty effectively looking only out the rearview mirror. It's kind of creepy. As long as the road's straight, you're good, but any turns and you're in trouble. Business is the same way. The thing about startups where you have a huge advantage is larger companies run their company almost exclusively off of lagging metrics. So if you can create, or if some market trend bends the road on them, they're just going to keep going straight. and you can follow the bend in the road because you're looking out the front of the car, not out the back. So if we think about this from a startup standpoint, prospect demos per week, that's a leading indicator potentially of sales. Now, if you're in marketing, because this is all relative, leading and lagging is relative. If you're in marketing, prospect demos per week is actually a lagging indicator of your marketing campaigns. So keep in mind, it's very perspective based where you're at between leading and lagging. But obviously, prospect demos will come before deals closed per week. So if you want to predict how many deals you're closing this week, some math on your prospect demos will help you build that understanding of your business. Generic, specific, and behavioral. So as we think about this, metrics can fall into these different camps, different classifications. So in a car, a generic metric is the speedometer. Every single car has a speedometer in it, so you can know how fast you're going. A specific measurement in your car related to gas cars, not electric, is the oil temperature. And then behavioral is if you put one of those computer dongles into your car, it can tell you if you're braking fast, if you're accelerating hard. So it can give you all these behavioral statistics around your business. So the startup equivalent is a generic metric is available cash. Now, any of you that are close to running out of money know that this doesn't mean just because it's lagging or a generic metric that it's not a valuable metric. Because if you're getting close to running out of cash, available cash is a KPI you should pay a lot of attention to. But it's generic. Every company in the land has one of those. Monthly recurring revenue, that's specific to term-based businesses, so recurring revenue type businesses. And then behavioral is something very specific to your company. So one of the companies that I was working with out of the Chicago program, one of their key metrics they really paid attention to, their workflow system, was number of hours saved per workflow that was instantiated in their customer's environment. So that let them understand that the product wasn't just being used, but it was valuable to the organization, to their customer. So again, it doesn't mean that one of these is better than the other, but it helps you understand the nuance of your business. One of my favorites, correlation and causation. So we are meaning-making machines, which means that if we see the data, a near perfect correlation between import oil from Norway and cars getting run down by trains, near perfect correlation. Now our brains will jump to the fact that, oh, that's causality. Telling myself the story, that means we're using more oil, it means we're driving more. The more we drive, we get hit by trains more. Maybe, maybe not. Causality is if I turn my blinker on, the light flashes next to my speedometer. I caused that to happen. So in startup land, a correlation could be Facebook spend and signups. A lot of you will think the more we spend on Facebook, the more signups we get. A lot of you have data that that's true. One of the companies that I was working with, they believed that was true. So they ran a test. The hypothesis was if we spend more on Facebook, our signups will go up, 10% more on Facebook, 10% more signups. They ran the test and got about, not quite, they got about 5% more. And they were like, awesome, correlation there. And then they dug into the data and they realized that when they ran the campaign, they actually screwed up. And they stopped their Facebook spend. And their signups went up 5%. No correlation between Facebook spending. So that wanders more into causality, which is, in this example, there was a company that was trying to get an increase in day one signups of their mobile app. They ran an experiment where they put an in-app guide in to try to up the conversion rate on day one. So they ran that with a subset of their market. They got the hypothesis came true. Then they turned it off, came back down within baseline, turned it back on, came back up. So they were able to do a cause and effect test on that. There's a little trick that can help you, because we're all storytelling machines, to help you check in on, are we at correlation here or causation? Because causation is a gold standard. Like, you want to know, if we do this over here in our business, this great thing's going to happen over here. But it takes a long time to get there. The trick with correlation is if you look at it and flip the order and it still makes sense, you probably have correlation. We'll go back to this one as an example. So if the correlation, you could say, if we import more crude oil, do train accidents go up? Okay, that makes sense. Train accidents go up means we import more crude oil. Maybe, maybe not, but it's coherent. It sort of makes sense. That's when you know you have correlation. Causation is, if you do the same standard, I turn the turn signal on, the light blinks, that causes that. Light blinks, I turn the turn signal on. Does that make any sense in your car? So in that case, you know you have potential for causality there because it doesn't make sense the other direction. So you're looking for what's called the arrow of direction or arrow of correlation or causality ultimately in your business. But early on, all you have is stuff that, well, these seem to happen together. And it's a mystery why, and that's part of entrepreneurship, is digging in and understanding why. KPI dynamic. How do these fit together? How do we think about KPIs in a larger way? There's kind of two axes I'm going to build here. The three things I talked about: generic, specific behavioral on one side, and then leading to lagging on the other. So again, I talked about leading to lagging is based on your perspective. It's not like it's an absolute. There's a continuum here. There's also a continuum on the generic, the specific, and the behavioral. That's a continuum too. So there's a powerful way you start to think about metrics in your company, and I'll talk about when you're in investor meetings. You can learn a lot about an investor based on the questions they ask on this schematic here. There's a zone here of your metrics or KPIs if you plot them against these two axes. In the bottom right here are accounting KPIs. These are the easy ones to come to because they're generic, they're common to every company in the land, and they tend to be very lagging indicators. So an example of that is cash balance. Every company in the land has a cash balance, and it's the most lagging indicator possible for your business. A lot of companies will say, hey, we need to up the cash balance. There's a couple ways to do that. You can bring in more revenue from customers, you could raise more money from investors, but ultimately, just because you need more cash doesn't mean it will give you answers about how to raise money or how to bring more money in from customers. But it is a powerful KPI, especially if you're running low on cash. Next, there tends to be this kind of region of investor KPIs. Now we're starting to get more specific into your business, and we're getting more into leading indicators of how your business is working. So if we think about cash balance, months of burn is your burn rate. Cash balance, burn rate, gives you the months of burn. So that's a little bit more of a leading indicator. You're looking a little bit more out into the future. MRR, again, more of a leading indicator, but now specific to your business. Daily active users, that's another example here. So these are questions that often investors will ask you about. There's another zone here, which is management KPIs. And this is the zone that's really important to get into as you operate your business. It's going to be super easy and very obvious to pick all of the accounting KPIs for your business. Please avoid that. It's okay to pick kind of in the investor zone. You should have answers there. Initially, it's okay to operate your business with an understanding just at that level, but ultimately what you want to get to is an understanding of your business where you can figure your business out based on the management KPIs. So in this case, it's an example of a company that's a photo sharing company. A leading indicator is impressions per day. So that's more of a marketing, but it's still pretty generic because most companies, when they're doing kind of lead-based generation, are going to have some kind of impression metric. Way up there in the behavioral is they noticed that on the 7th picture that somebody added, their likelihood of staying on the site grew dramatically. So the KPI that they realized was new users, how fast can we get them to posting that 7th picture? That drove a bunch of behavior within the company because they knew once you got the sign up to that point, the likelihood of them sticking was so much higher. So this gives you an example of various spots that you can put probes into your business to understand, measure, and drive progress. Initially, you may only have the accounting ones. You may have guesses at this investor zone, but ultimately the goal here is to understand your business to the point where you can build metrics and have visibility into your business up into that management KPI zone. A lot of people think, okay, as long as the KPIs were golden, that's just part one. Part two is checking in on the KPIs. Because ultimately what you want to do is have the KPIs drive your behavior and drive your understanding of how the business works. So if you're not checking in on them, they're just kind of these cute things you hang on the wall, or they're the things you send out every month in your investor update. What I really encourage you to do is a weekly ops review. This may be one of the most powerful meetings you can set up in your company. The agenda that I like is the simplest agenda that works because I like figuring out the minimum effective dose instead of the maximum dose. It's like, what's the minimum thing that will make a huge impact for you? Just do this. Start the meeting out, gather. Initially, it's your whole company. Eventually, it'll be kind of the decision makers, span of control, sphere of influence people in your company. That's the fun of scaling, is you get to have that bicker about who gets to be in a meeting and not. Enjoy it while you're small in a startup that you don't have that issue. Start out with good news, because the goal of this meeting, once you get past good news, is productive paranoia. Productive is an important word there. Not just paranoia about all the things that could kill you, productive paranoia, which is what are the things we should be concerned about and how do we take action on them right now. Good news is important because that productive paranoia may make the rest of the meeting seem kind of sour because you're hand-wringing about stuff. Go around the table, have each person just say something great that happened either in the company or in their personal life. It's a great way to make a little connection. It's really important to review your goals because goals and KPIs are not the same thing. They're linked together in an important way. So review your goals. How'd you do on those? Review your KPIs. How did they move? Now, if you notice here, if you're reviewing your KPIs every week, if you pick lagging indicators, it'll become apparent pretty quickly because over a span of a week, they won't move. And you're like, well, it's 42 is still the number on that KPI. If you're picking leading indicators, they will move each week. So that's a good way to check in on. And when you review your KPIs, you're not just reviewing how are the KPI, how are the numbers doing, you're also checking in on, is this the right way to measure our business? Because let's say something goes really wrong in your business and all the KPIs were showing everything's great. That's a great chance to reflect on, is this the right KPI? Or if something great happens in your business and the KPIs don't move, another chance to reflect on, do we have the right KPIs in our business? And then really important part of productive paranoia, and this is the productive part, is clear the issues. Pure paranoia is worry. Productive paranoia is where you actually take action on it. So before people get up out of that meeting, understand what are the issues, potentially have a discussion on them while everybody's there. So don't call a meeting to have a meeting later. Clear it right there. Figure out who's responsible for it. And the cool thing about doing this every week is the default is you will report back or tell us a story next week of what happened as you cleared that issue this week. So there's this built-in weekly accountability into the heartbeat cadence of these meetings. Some things the issues may be strong enough that you can't move them to the following week. So in that case, who's got the action item and when are they going to tell the story back out to that group about how it's progressing? Simple. 4 agenda items, super, super powerful meeting. When I was at Rally, we grew from 0 to successful IPO. This was the backbone cadence of our company. Initially, we had almost everybody in the meeting when we were 12 people. And when we were public and 600 people, we had 35, 40 people in this meeting. And it's not like it's a 5-hour meeting. So one of the ways to think about this is this cadence, these meetings are a way to invest in your success. So if we do just kind of a line item here, we talked about stand-ups in another session, about just very quickly getting together, clearing issues. So let's say that takes 15 minutes a day. I encourage a half-hour ops review. These do not need to be an hour long at this size. As you get bigger, sometimes they get to be an hour. But even when we were 600 people in public, we would get through that part of the meeting in 25 minutes. Complete review of every bit of functional bit in the company in 25 minutes. Retrospectives and weekly planning. When you think about working on the company versus in the company, so on is where you're improving the company, working in the company is just busy doing things. If you install all of this, you're investing about 5% of your time in the sort of weekly heartbeat. The monthly heartbeat adds in strategic planning, which I'll talk about tomorrow in goal setting. That'll up you to about 7%. And then if you do a yearly cadence where you're including quarterly offsites, generally that's just initially the founding team, executive team. Ultimately, you're getting to a point where if you do this well, you're investing about 8.7% of your time making sure the company runs really well.
On KPIs within the organization? How do you fast track that?
So usually within startups, buy-in is a pretty easy thing to get because you're all pretty vested in it. You may get to the point where there's a debate, is it this KPI or that KPI? What I encourage you to do is focus with the conviction to change. It's really, really alluring at this stage of your company to say, I'm just going to like bomb a floodlight out into the market. I'm going to bomb a floodlight out into all of the metrics that are going on in our company. I'm going to have a dashboard with 100 metrics on it. Like, I rock at this. That's not focus. So in doing that, you're hoping that what will come back is like, if I shine a big enough light, something will flash in the distance, and like I'll go respond to that. The trick is to shine a bunch of lasers in. Because the problem with the floodlight is if something reflects back at you, you have no idea why. One of the CEOs that I used to work for, he said that it's awesome to have a company that's working and you know why. It's awful to have a company that's not working and you don't know why. It's really bad to have a company that's working and you don't know why. And so the trick with shining this floodlight in is you can have a company that's working and you won't know why. And then there's a lot of expectation like, well, hey, it's working. Here's a big pile of money. Go crank the knob up and give me a bunch of money back as an investor. And you're like, oh, I don't know how this thing works. It's just making money. And so that pressure can be really challenging. KPIs are the same way. If you have 100 KPIs, because it will be easy to avoid that conversation narrowing in on one by just saying, oh, sure, yeah, let's monitor that too. Ah, yeah, let's monitor that too. And next thing you know, you wake up and you have 100 KPIs. That's not the way to do it. The way I encourage you to do it is say, okay, here are candidate KPIs. Let's laser focus on these for the next week, next month. Let's see if we put structured energy into moving them. Do they move? Does it move our business forward and make progress? If your business is stagnant and your KPIs are stagnant, you're just kind of in a murky place. If your business is failing and your KPIs are going up, then you ask yourself the question, okay, did I just land on a leading KPI and things are going to be good later? Or if there's no correlation there between the energy you're putting in and those metrics moving, it's the wrong metric. So focus, but with the ability to commit to a new one quickly is what I would encourage you to do to build consensus around what are the right things to monitor. And you may realize that, oh, we're monitoring 3 here, that really this behavioral leading indicator is the one we really care about. Let's ignore the other 2. So you'll kind of narrow it down over time. But that's part of the numerical understanding of your business. It's messy at first, just like what you're doing. It's messy. Like probably most of you sitting here are like, yeah, this is messy. I wish I could turn the switch on and the light would go on, but it doesn't work that way. I have to like do a voodoo dance in the corner and eventually the light goes on. It's just messy. And then the KPIs will help you get clarity around that.
KPIs is, that one that you put up there. You do X action 7 times, and we've discovered once this person does that, that retention goes up through the roof, or that referrals go up through the roof, and that really drives the business. Or discovering those when you're a startup with 2 or 3 people, and you might not have like the data science background to do that analysis feasible, or is that something you can kind of do once you start to grow a little bit and grow out your team?
Yeah, there's the data science background of it. One of the key aspects in my mind, of entrepreneurship is it's this really unique blend of art and science. And so what I'm teaching you is a little bit of the science behind the scientific method, how metrics work, the science of company building, and there's a ton of art to it too. So all of you, specifically the founders, have this gut feeling about which direction to take your business. So it's really easy early on, and it's actually a very effective method, which is just trust your gut. Just go with where your gut says. KPIs are a way to add a little bit of numerical evidence to your gut. Because if you look at the science behind improving your gut reaction to things, is a very important part is the feedback loop of my gut told me to do this. What's the data coming back that shows that that was actually right? So if you cut yourself off from feedback, your gut intuitions will never improve. So it's a balance between the two. So what I encourage you to do early on, like if you're at a point where you're like, I don't know, there's no science here, there's no rule book, there's no map, I don't know. Trust your gut, go with your gut, then ask yourself what's the easiest, fastest way to measure that so I can just get a little bit of data back about how well that worked, and then it's just continual cycles like that. So as a startup, the faster you can make those cycles, the better. You can do 10 of those cycles, 100 of those cycles a week, I've seen some companies do. Big companies, they do maybe 2 of those a quarter. So if you're in a market that's changing quickly, you have a dramatic, if you get good at this, you have a dramatic advantage over incumbent companies. Now they're big, they're strong, they can throw tons of money at something, but if a market's moving and you follow that movement, you can respond in a way that no other big company can.
Okay. So I want to start with realizing that a lot of this terminology is strange and unfamiliar, but don't get too worried about that. Words like KPI and all that. It's really about trying to identify a set of data points that can give you some idea what's happening. And most of you have some aspect of that, I'm sure, whether it's daily sales or whatever those metrics are. And really what this is advocating for is a little bit of a structured process to identify these and to, especially if you do have more than one person, get everybody on the same indicators. And tomorrow we're going to do the workshop, which will help you figure out how to set up KPIs for your particular business. But sometimes the terminology is a little intimidating, and realistically, it's just try to find some things that data that points at how you're doing, and not just in one dimension, not just in sales. Maybe there are production items that need to be part of your KPI. Maybe it's certain marketing activities, budgets. There's a variety of things that this applies to. So I encourage you to think broadly, and we will go into some more depth on it tomorrow. I do want to point out that after the 4th of July, we're going to have Andy Kurtz come on as a guest speaker. Many of you know him. He's one of the top branding and packaging guys in the country, in my opinion. And so he's come up with a special program for our class that we can access some of his expertise without having to go whole hog into it. So I'll let him talk about that. But that's July 6th. He's going to be a guest, and he's going to introduce this idea that he has that I think would be very exciting for everybody to get some of his expertise without having to sign up for the whole enchilada. So any questions or observations? Anybody want to comment on these today? I do know it's very dense and it's kind of startup oriented, but it is still applicable even to our group. Yeah, Branson.
Yeah, in the cell phone business, your job depends on KPIs. Really, like you can lose your job if you can't match where they look at where the KPI should be and what your numbers are. That is the difference between and I'll be real. If you do your KPI and you really watch it, you will make good commission because how they have it set up. It really looks at 3 things. It looks at how much you're promoting yourself, how many people come inside the store, and your customer service. And basically, if you have those 3 things together, you'll be able to do a return call to that customer and sell another product or whatever you need to do. And I learned to hate KPIs because it was such a everyday thing, and we did them like literally your supervisor would come up and go over your KPI at the end of your shift every day. And coming in and not knowing about the terminology, it was overwhelming. So I'm glad that you're going to be able to break this down, because coming into that terminology and trying to adjust your sales or business against it, not knowing any of the terminology, is ridiculous at that time. But now I understand what a KPI is and how it works with a business. But back then, it's kind of like what you said. It's a lot of terminology that you don't understand.
Well, yeah, and I think you know, in the case of cell phones, at least from my limited exposure, you know, you've got multiple locations, you know, selling cell phones, and they got to have some way to manage, you know, at kind of a high level, some metric or some set of metrics that give them an idea what's going on. So hopefully before it becomes too much of a problem, if a particular store is way behind on its indicators, might show that, you know, something's going on, and they would jump in. And, you know, very few of us here in this class are at that point where we have a giant organization and we're trying to manage multiple locations. But I would argue that because it is so stressful being an entrepreneur, and trying to remember what really matters on a day-to-day basis, having some kind of regular set, if you will, of data points that you can use, that you can consistently look at, you know, will just give you more confidence in what you're doing, even if you're by yourself. And probably even more important then to identify the things, because you can get all wrapped up in the forest, you know, instead of the trees, or whatever the right phrase is. So, you know, I like that aspect of it. And it's a little bit intimidating to think of, you know, your business can be reduced to numbers, but certain aspects of it can, you know, and these key performance indicators are really what that's about. And I struggle with it because I'm not a natural numbers kind of management guy. I don't have that background. But I also see the advantage, especially over time, because you know, you tend to have victories and losses on a daily basis, and sometimes it's hard to stay on that road, you know, the road, you know, that you need to be on, and to check on. And you know, Branson's example there, they did it every day at the end of the shift. That's pretty intense, in my opinion. But even if you do it once a week, or some sort of way of figuring out what's going on, particularly as you get your websites up and more activity going online, that kind of stuff is relatively measurable compared to, you know, being in a store or something like that. So, yeah. So, anybody want to jump in on that? Thoughts? Okay. All right. Well, that's what I have for today. Tomorrow we will go into setting up some of these KPIs. We'll give it a shot. And hopefully, you know, we'll go into the 4th of July holiday just full of numbers, you know, full of data, full of numbers. So good numbers, record numbers. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.